The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Battle scars and experience and all these things we talk about around teams, you're watching it happen in real time. You're watching them implement it in real time. Tonight was a game of responses in more ways than one. At individual levels, at the team levels, in the big picture of it all, in the true 48-minute game, response after response after response. Like, obviously, the intensity, the physicality, the effort, the defense, it was night and day different for Oklahoma City, and it was enough to get them a win tonight. But everyone should respond when you get your lunch handed to you by 42 points in a Western Conference Finals game. You dang sure better respond, right? Like, that's not the impressive part. The impressive part was after getting blown out 42, by 42 points in Game 3, in Game 4 on the road, you had a response for every single Timberwolves run. Every single Timberwolves flurry of buckets was met by a Thunder counterpunch, was met by the Thunder steadying the waters, getting the car back on the road, as they like to say. And that's tough to do. When the crowd is rocking, when you've let some leads slip, it's tough to regain that balance, to regain kind of that equilibrium about yourself, so to say, and get a win. And you never got down by more than 2 points in a game that had 6 lead changes and 2 ties, and you grew an 11-point lead at one point in this game to start the third quarter. And after that 11-point lead, you saw it evaporate to be tied in the third quarter, and it still wasn't enough to shake this Thunder crew. They respond yet again. This has been a season full of responses. This was a game full of responses, and the Thunder Stars played at a super high level, and Minnesota's didn't. And Minnesota will be kicking themselves. Like, when you look at this game and see all the different ways that they got contributions from their, role players, and all the different ways that you didn't get contributions at the top. The Thunder made Julius Randle's life miserable. I mean, they forced him to put the ball on the deck. They forced him to give it up. And they forced him into tough looks with playing underneath him and attacking him at the catch point and already being into his body as he's receiving the basketball. Anthony Edwards, he couldn't get shots up. I mean, this is one of the best players in the NBA, and he couldn't get a shot up because unless he was going to play hero isolation basketball, he wasn't going to get the ball back. Because the Thunder forced the ball out of his hands, and they could never redirect the pass back to Ant. They could never give it back to their star because either A, they just didn't have the tools to do so, right? The facilities for that of the complementary playmakers, or B, because the Thunder were so willing to live with these role players going off and not panic when these role players were having great nights that they would be silly to pass up these looks in favor of going back to Ant. And so, you forced Ant to not take any shots and Randle not to take any shots for all intents and purposes. And with Randle, with Randle, he legitimately just didn't shoot the basketball. He had 7 attempts. But Anthony Edwards did have 7 free throws on top of the 13 shot attempts. But for his standards, that's not a high shot attempt night. Even if you counted those free throw attempts, as individual shot attempts, in terms of the pair of free throws as one shot attempt, it still was not enough for him. And that was a huge credit to the Thunder's defense. So in the half court, they were great. In transition, I thought that they were great for most of the night, but especially at the end of the first quarter. And these are the little things that add up for OKC and that add up over the course of any game. Where Isaiah Joe bricks a 3 at the end of the first quarter, and Ihart in transition just sits down on Ant, forces Ant to loop around Ihart, head to the sideline, and that slightly longer motion of having to loop around Ihart and not just cut through the lane allowed AC to recover and defend Ant, but also forced Ant out of bounds and get the stop to stay up by 7 points at the end of the first. Whereas, if that missed shot turns into an Ant rim rocker and gets the crowd all riled up, and now all of a sudden you're only up by 5, and then the Timberwolves get a bucket out of the quarter break, and now you're up one possession, and all of a sudden that can start to snowball on you. But those little things were perfect for OKC, including right out of that quarter break, J-Dub gets a pick six, for a fast break bucket. And the Thunder were able to just respond, and they responded to their own adversity. We'll talk about how J-Dub, who was the star of this game, responded to individual adversity. We'll talk about how this Thunder offense in the third quarter went flat, at the starting segment of the third quarter, near the middling segment. And this was a tie game at the 4:25 mark. And they went from a tie game at 4:25 to being up by 5 to start the fourth quarter, eventually up by 7 in the fourth quarter. And then they had to grind it out at the end, playing the foul game and getting this win. You had the huge block by Chet Holmgren on Jaden McDaniels to ice the game as McDaniels was spinning through the lane. You weathered the storm of a really good Rudy game, a really just excellent Jaden McDaniels game. And then you had Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was incredible. You had Dante hitting big shots for Minnesota. It just didn't matter because you did all the little things right in the grand scheme of things, and especially in your late game execution. I mean, the only thing you could really point to as a bad execution point was the Shea turnover whenever Minnesota had to foul him. But outside of that, they handled the foul up three stuff perfectly, just like they did in Memphis. And, Ant did a great job of missing the second free throw intentionally. And it was Shea who was the first on the ball, on the loose ball, to get it and fling it to the opposite side of the court. And it only left Minnesota with 0.3 seconds to try to make a play on the wrong side of the timeline, on the inbound on the sideline. And J-Dub goes and gets it, goes and steals it away out of the air and ends the game as OKC. The key difference here is, again, the stars, but it's also that they kept it competitive on the glass. Like they didn't, they did get beat on the glass. Let me stress that. They got beat, but they kept it competitive at least. They forced 21 turnovers, and that would have been an even bigger marker had the Thunder not turned it over 14 times themselves. And they lost second chance points. They lost fast break points. They lost paint points. This is the first time in NBA history where teams have done it at this rate, where like you give up 43%. You give up 43% from three, and you give up the turnover battle. You give up the rebounding battle. You give up the second chance battle, etc., and actually win a game. But it's a star-driven league, and the Thunder superstars came through in this one, and they won the possession battle in the end by shooting more than the Timberwolves. Frankly, I mean, like if both teams shot 50% from the floor, but one team had 10 more shots, well, there's your answer. Like there's your answer of how the Thunder won this game, is because they found ways to make up the margins and make up the possessions, even though they lost the rebounding battle. Because they won the 50-50 balls, they won the hustle plays, they won the ability to get stops and by drawing little screens and doing those little things right. And again, the turnovers and rebounds, of course, help with that. But still, the Thunder were able to dominate that possession battle to get this gutty win on the road, and now head back home up 3-1, one win away from the NBA Finals. First time since 2016 you've been up 3-1. First time since 2016 you've been in the Western Conference Finals. We know how that route ended, so the series isn't over, but you feel really good heading back home to the Paycom Center 3-1 rather than 2-2. Surprise, you would prefer winning than losing in any circumstance. The Thunder getting a big win over the Minnesota Timberwolves, where J-Dub was the star. Look, J-Dub owned the floor tonight on both ends. He got whatever he wanted offensively. He was just outright disrespectful to Minnesota. He broke into the Target Center. He made a ham and cheese sandwich, and he threw the wrap around the floor. I mean, he just dominated this game from start to finish. The first 7 points of the night came from Chet and J-Dub. It was J-Dub's transition three. It was J-Dub's mid-range game that started this game hot for OKC. And you just felt like there was a different intensity, a different aggression level, a different force that he was playing with early on that carried over through the course of this game. He had this great drive to the left side where he gathers it away from the rim to keep the ball away from his defender and finishes up over him. And J-Dub was feeling it in the sense of just the willingness and the aggressiveness to take those shots and create those shots. Those were big deals for him. I thought that the Thunder did a great job of feeding him in the first quarter, like understanding the moment, understanding what a heater that he was on, and playing through J-Dub, and the willingness of a guy like Shea, who plays the entire first quarter, to be able to find J-Dub as consistently as the Thunder did. It continues to be a testament to their relationship, continues to be a testament to kind of the team effort that this team plays with. But J-Dub was awesome in this one. He did it as a playmaker as well, finding Ihart with a lob, and then finding Alex Caruso on this beautiful dime that he was able to dish out to Caruso in the dunker spot. He just rose up at the elbow and flings it inside of the dunker spot to Caruso. Of course, with the heater that J-Dub was on and the way that he was finding his spots in the mid-range, anytime he rises up for that shot, the defenders have their back turned to Caruso now, and they're all attentive to J-Dub, and he was able to find Caruso for that easy bucket. He was just excellent. He had 2 points in the second quarter, and again, a game about responses. It's OKC by 8 at halftime, despite those 2 points from Dub in the second quarter. He has double-digit points in the fourth quarter. Like, he doesn't let that second quarter get to him. Of course, his minutes are a bit different in the second quarter, and his roles are a bit different in the second quarter. But double digits in the fourth quarter, double digits whenever you needed it, and especially a tone setter to start that fourth quarter for OKC. He had that behind-the-back stop on a dime elbow jumper. That's just unguardable. It gave OKC a 99-94 lead. He nails the kick out from SGA. While SGA's falling to the floor, he nutmegs the defender to find J-Dub, who nails the three and gives OKC a 116-109 lead in the fourth quarter. 34 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, 2 turnovers, 54% from the floor, 6 for 9 from 3. Very nice game from beyond the arc, but a career best in make, 66% from the three-point line as well. 2 for 2 at the charity stripe. I thought that J-Dub really commanded this game. Whenever he's playing at this level, when he is hitting his shots, especially from beyond the arc, it just changes how you're forced to guard Oklahoma City. And we talked about it throughout the preview show. Just if you can keep pace from 3 with Minnesota and you can force them to respect you and unclog the paint even a little bit, like, then the recipe changes and the formula gets lost for Minnesota to be able to find ways to stop OKC. Because while the Thunder shot 43% from 3, just as Minnesota did, you point to, it was the 18 makes for Minnesota and the 16 makes for the Thunder. So it's like they had more shots overall, but they had 5 more makes from the floor, and the Thunder did, and only 2 less makes from beyond the arc. So like the Thunder were able to match and go pound for pound with Minnesota in this game. And the Thunder's threes were just timelier. The Thunder threes were just absolutely when you needed them to steady runs or to extend leads. It was just excellent to watch. And when the Thunder are hitting their threes, they're really tough to beat because you know what's going to happen when you have the ball with SGA, who drives into the teeth of this Minnesota defense, using his shoulder to gain separation and bump Rudy Gobert off his spots to finish at the rim. And that's the moment that you knew it kind of felt like it was going to be different for Shea. It felt like he had a more aggressive gear to him. It felt like he was going to be able to use his frame a bit more to gain separation. The refs really let both sides play tonight. He had the pull-up step-back 3 over Rudy Gobert, and my Lord, that was a shot that he looked comfortable doing in this game, and that's a shot that the Timberwolves have kind of lived with and dared with him to try to shoot. And tonight it felt like he made it a mission to get to that spot more. He only converts two triples the entire game. He goes 2 for 7, but it felt like he tried to show Minnesota he's willing to take those shots in an attempt to get them to change their coverages. And that first one going in over Rudy was a big deal for SGA. The soft touch in the lane on heavy contested mid-range jumpers was out of this world by Shea. He had some excellent kickouts that could have made this an even gaudier assist total than 10. But early on, the shots weren't falling for OKC, and eventually they recovered, and they did. But like, SGA was from start to finish a great playmaker for this team.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and you place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking your favorites or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. There's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Stuff that Minnesota did right on Saturday in the Game 3 win, the convincing Game 3 win that I thought would be sustainable in Game 4 and beyond in this series. Most of it didn't happen the way it unfolded on Saturday, which sounds obvious. They won in a blowout on Saturday and lost a close game on Monday. But a lot of these things are things that, coming into the series, I thought would be strengths for Minnesota against OKC, and we saw it happen on Saturday. So therefore, there was some hope that, like, hey, they figured this out. This is going to be better on Monday. That wasn't exactly the case. Obviously, high level, I don't want to go blow for blow in this one, but Minnesota was down 7 at the end of the first quarter. They gave up 37 in the first frame, but I actually thought the defense was at least very active. They forced a couple of OKC turnovers. The Thunder hit some tough shots. And really that to me is one of the big takeaways, like just surface level. I know the Thunder shot over 50% from the floor, 43% from three. They scored 128 points. I actually don't think Minnesota's defense was that bad. There were some bad moments to be sure. And it was obviously nowhere near what it was on Saturday in their winning game 3. But there were some positives, and especially early in this game. I thought the physicality was pretty good. And then at halftime, Minnesota was down 8. The third quarter, Minnesota had their big runs. They had big runs in the third quarter. Early in the fourth quarter, they tied the game. I think it was at 79 midway through the third quarter. OKC answered with a run. And that was like one of the stories of the second half of this game was every time the Wolves made a push, Mark Daigneault called a timeout. OKC would go on a 7-0, 8-0 run. Happened several times in the second half. Every time the Wolves would hit, a tough 2 in the paint from Dante or Jaden McDaniels, J-Dub or Alex Caruso is hitting a 3 on the other end. Like that's how this game unfolded. And it's a massive credit to the Thunder. And it just underscores just how good OKC is. And I don't want to it's not soapbox time because we have a lot to break down in this game, but let's be careful to not discredit the Timberwolves for losing to an extremely good OKC Thunder team. I picked the Wolves to win the series at 7, which obviously is what's going to have to happen if they're going to win the series now. But the Thunder, as we established, and I talked about this last week, are a historically good team. A 68-win regular season team, the best point differential of any team in history, one of the best defenses, actually, I think the best defense in the past 20-plus years. Just a phenomenal team. And the Wolves have blown them out and gone toe-to-toe with them over the last 2 games. And yeah, the 2 games in OKC, games 1 and 2, were extremely disappointing. But if one of those turns out in a different way or they pull this game out, we're talking about a 2-2 series. And the Thunder are phenomenal. Minnesota played really well overall in this game. And the things that I ticked off on Monday's show that the Wolves got on Saturday that I was expecting them to get moving forward, that just didn't happen. One of the things was rebounding, was the offensive glass. Minnesota finally showed up on Saturday on the offensive glass. And yeah, they had 19 offensive rebounds in their Monday night's loss, the game 4 loss. They had 19 offensive rebounds. Great. So did OKC. The Wolves won the rebounding battle. They were +5, but OKC had 19 offensive rebounds. They had more offensive rebounds than they did defensive rebounds. Now, I thought this was a little fluky against the Wolves in OKC's favor. There were a couple of possessions where Minnesota just didn't put a body on a body. They didn't play a ton of zone in this game, so that wasn't as big of an issue as it had been in I think it was game 2. Games 1 and 2, but one of those games is worse than the other, where they played more zone. They couldn't rebound out of the zone, which is always a bit dicey for a team that doesn't play much zone. It's a little bit, it's not a myth, but it's a bit of an exaggeration that it's rebounding out of a zone is impossible. It shouldn't be, but for a team that doesn't do a lot of it, it can be challenging. And a team that has defensive rebounding lapses like Minnesota, it can be a challenge. And that wasn't the sole, because again, they didn't play that much zone in this game, but overall the defensive rebounding, there was some flukiness there. There were a couple of possessions where Rudy's out guarding on a switch and Ant and Nas are down near the paint and are not rebounding. Or there were a couple of times or several minutes in this game where TJ Shannon was playing the 4. And I guess he only ended up playing 8 minutes total anyway, but they played really small with Shannon at the 4. And the rebounding just wasn't as good then. And that's not a knock on TJ Shannon. That's just a lack of size on the floor. And OKC, Isaiah Hartenstein started the game at the 5 and were next to Chet in the front court and did not start after half. Alex Caruso was on the floor to start the second half. OKC pushed towards small ball. And at times, Rudy Gobert was able to take advantage. At times, the Wolves were able to take advantage. But Gobert only had 2 defensive rebounds in this game. Part of that was because he was out defending on switches and actually was fantastic. We'll talk more about that. I thought overall Rudy played really well. That's going to get lost here. And of course, people will probably rip on him for the lack of defensive rebounding. But it's because he wasn't in the paint. OKC was drawing him out of the paint. And he was the one contesting on the tough shots in the paint that the Thunder were missing and then getting offensive rebounds off of some of these, for them, advantageous bounces. I thought Minnesota had some bad luck on the defensive glass. But that was something I was expecting to be better overall in the series. And then when we saw it in game 3, I said, all right, maybe this will be what we expected moving forward. It was not. Limiting turnovers. That didn't happen. Minnesota had I believe 21 turnovers in this game. I'm going to make sure I got the right number here. 23 turnovers in this game for the Wolves. Too many turnovers. OKC had 22 points off of those 23 turnovers, which isn't like a crazy number. In fact, Minnesota was more efficient scoring off of Thunder live ball turnovers. The Wolves had a couple shot clock violations. Nikhil had a bad travel. There were a couple of offensive fouls and screens. Randall had one. I think McDaniels had one. So there were some dead ball turnovers, which helps limit that quite a bit. And like, if you're going to turn the ball over against the Thunder, it's got to be it can't be a live ball turnover. So Minnesota did an okay job at limiting those, but still 23 turnovers is far too much. We knew that was going to be a problem coming in. That was a problem. And so that, again, wasn't a surprise. And then making threes. This is something we expected coming into the series. We expected the Wolves to shoot better from three. They were sub 30% in each of the first two games, and then they were 50% in the game 3 win. In this game, the Wolves were 44%, which is great, but OKC was 43%. I mean, like, it basically canceled that out, and OKC's role players shot the ball extremely well in this game. So that was not necessarily something I expected. I thought Minnesota's role players would shoot better than the Thunder's, and over the last couple of games overall, that's been the case. But in this one, it was basically even. And again, something that we expected to happen, but enough other stuff went OKC's way that it kind of negated that impact.
This is how the playoffs go. When you win, you feel like you're on top of the world. The team feels like they can do no wrong. And when you lose, the sky is falling. You're never going to win again. The series is going to end in the minimum possible of games in not your favor. And that is where the Pacers stand right now, fresh off of a Game 3 loss to the Knicks, a 71-45 run to close the game. That's a high number to allow. That's not a number to score. They've got some stuff to solve on both ends. I will generically ask you this before we get into more specifics, because this is kind of what I was asking players at practice today and Rick Carlisle. Do you, Kyle, from Game 3, feel like it was more the Pacers getting away from what they do and not executing the way they want? Or did the Knicks actually do something tangible, strategically, lineup-wise, whatever the answer may be, that got the Pacers out of their rhythm? Because one of those is a lot worse than the other.
I'm going to give you two answers. In Game 3, specifically in the fourth quarter, I thought the Knicks played great defense. There were multiple times I was watching the game and watching, especially Deuce McBride, OG was doing this too, scramble and recover with simply more effort than they had showed in Games 1 and 2. I thought the Knicks defense was very good in the fourth quarter. I also, when I went back and rewatched the game, as I unfortunately did before this podcast, I felt much better about some of the Pacers' shots. The Knicks were still not guarding the three-point line very well. Cat was still way too far away. OG was giving up open threes, and the Pacers were not taking them. Mismatch hunting was weird. Sometimes it was Pascal gets Josh Hart on him and backs him down and shoots over him. Sometimes it was Andrew Nembhard drives on Deuce McBride. Aaron Nesmith posts up OG Anunoby. Those are not mismatches. Stop. Those are like just sort of boneheaded mistakes that you can't have in a close game. So lackadaisical effort in the end of the first half, and in the third quarter, tons of turnovers opened the door for the Knicks. That's all they needed. The defense stormed through, and I think made a big dent there. I want to give a second answer, though, before I throw it back to you, because this series has been extremely close, but for like a few plays here or there, it could easily be 3-0 Pacers or even 2-1 Knicks. And fundamentally, like a couple shots here or there, I don't think should change how we view the balance of the entire series. And when we zoom out and look at the entire series and the sort of like profile that defines the Pacers offense, I think there is more reason to be concerned. So pick your stat. I don't care. Pace, shot quality, ball movement. I don't care which one you pick. However you imagine the Pacers' offensive style, all the stats are screaming the same thing, which is that series over series, the Pacers' offensive style has gone from holding up perfectly to maybe the Cavs made some inroads to, oh boy, the Knicks might be causing problems. Let's pick ball movement, because I want to make the point really clearly here. Series 1 against Milwaukee, 345 passes per game. That's a mark that would lead the NBA. Okay, so we start the playoffs with the Pacers moving the ball more than any other team in the league moves the ball. Fast forward to this series, We're at 276 passes per game. That's the same as the Celtics in the regular season. That's the difference between number 1 and bottom 10. And remember, a series that happened not too long ago where a high-profile offensive team got stagnant against the Knicks and gave up 20-point leads because they weren't moving the ball, and then the Knicks' next opponent wasn't going to make that mistake. I've news for Pacers fans. We're making that mistake. We're watching a team make that mistake. And again, I picked ball movement, okay, from number 1 to bottom 10. I don't care which one you pick. If you want to look at pace, it's the same story. You want to look at when the Pacers are taking their shots in the shot clock, it's the same story. They're taking shots way, way later in the shot clock again. Game 3 was even more dramatic than any game they've played in the playoffs. And again, the point of all of this is that in a series so close, zoom out, big picture, I actually am more concerned by the big picture than I am by the small one of Nick's season on the line. They turned up the defensive pressure. Yeah, they're going to do that. Zoom out, Pacers' offensive style isn't holding up the way it used to. That's more concerning to me.
Okay, let's tackle first game 3, second half. So OG was like not guarding anybody. Even he was guarding good shooters. He's like on the edge of the paint. He would kind of recover out. That was kind of cooking up the Pacers a little bit. That was the only thing that I tangibly felt like, oh, that feels a little bit different from them defensively, besides just like having their better defenders on the floor down the stretch of that game. And you mentioned intensity. When I think of the Pacers getting out of what they do, the thing I always talk about the most that you have mentioned already is mismatch hunting. They like when another team is switching, for some reason, when they play their worst, they get into it too much. It's like they're like, well, crap, what we're doing isn't working. Let's do this. This guy can score on this guy. And like, yeah, he can. Siakam did that a couple times, but like, it doesn't create as effective of shots, one. And two, they weren't even doing that good of a job of it. It felt like. Here's where the problem was to me. One, you mentioned like hard on Siakam, like that's not that big of a mismatch, but they would get Cat or Brunson on a good ball handler and then bring another screen in or swing it to the other side of the floor. And like, in part, they did a good job mismatch hunting. And then the other part, they're like, oh, yeah, we're playing random. Like, let's go. Let's flow to the next thing. It's like you did it. You did what you were supposed to do. And then you made it harder or got them out of it with a switch. You're bailing them out yourselves. Like that is not what they do or want to do. And so getting back to just principled randomness where mismatch hunting is part of what they do and not the forefront of what they do, I think will be key to getting back a lot of the things you just talked about. Their pace is better. When they're moving better, they get the good shot earlier. They're willing to take it earlier. Like Nesmith turns down an open 3, drives for a tough floater. Turner passes up a tough 3, has to take a tough 3 later in the possession. We could count a bunch just from the second half, right? That I lean more that they didn't play like themselves more than that the Knicks did anything tangibly so different that should have rocked them to that extent. Not that they did nothing. We can watch the game and go, oh, Jalen Brunson wasn't on the floor way more than he usually is, right? That's like the key thing of it. But a couple like Shamit's playing instead of Campaign. He's just a little bit bigger. OG was in different spots. All sorts of little things. Great. That's true. But yes, pace is slower, right? That they want to play fast. They always talk about wanting to play faster in the playoffs. They did not for a over half, really, but the significantly bad half of game 3, they didn't do that. They didn't generate good shots. People talked about, oh, they were 5 for 25 from 3. That's terrible. They won't shoot that bad again. One, they didn't generate that great of threes. Two, the fact that they only took 25, a little revealing. That's very low for them. Not a good shooting night in terms of creation or makes. Not something they'll be happy about with their shot quality there. They took a lot of mid-rangers. They kept up in the game because they made quite a few of them, but it just wasn't what they want to do. They got off the ball in the lane instead of getting to the rim or taking floaters that from their best players often go in. So I lean that a lot of that specific game was stuff that they got in their own way doing and or not doing. That's my long answer to the first part of what you say. To the second part of what you're saying, also agree. There's a reason that this series' margins are so small. A 3-point game, a 5-point game, and a 6-point game kind of tell you the story already that every possession is significant, but the indicators have been tipping towards the Knicks kind of slowly throughout the series anyway. And it was a matter of time in my head before Cat had some good stretch of play because he had not been very good in the first 2 games that really got things going. So there's a lot, like, even though the Pacers were 5 for 25 and didn't generate anything good, they'll be better at that in the next game, I imagine. I think they'll be better at getting their pace moving. They will be better at identifying what holes to pick at in the Knicks defense. Like, the Knicks didn't shoot that well either. Their offense could be much better. They only scored 106, right? All these, I've been talking for forever. There are a lot of little things that both teams probably feel like they can do better. But game 3 is the first time in the series it was like, oh, the Knicks have control of the game style completely. Their offense has been much better. Some of that is Cat. And even when Brunson came in, he immediately scored, and Deuce McBride get whatever shot he wants. So there's a lot the Pacers actually have to fix. But fortunately, I think for them, a lot of it starts with them, and it's less problem solving of something the Knicks are presenting them that is like new or fresh or specifically challenging, if that makes sense, even given the history of the series to this point.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
A much-needed win for Jerome Tang as PJ Haggerty commits to Kansas State.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats.
PJ Haggerty is an absolute stud. And for the amount of money that Kansas State just got him at, $2.5 million, not the $4 million price tag that many thought it was going to take, it's an absolute steal. This is a player that was third in the country, third in the entire nation in points per game last year at 21.7. Also rebounded almost 6 per game. That's 3.7 assists per game, and shot almost 48% from the field, including 36.4% from the three-point line. Great free-throw shooter as well. Lots of things on that stat line I just mentioned are things that were much needed for Kansas State last year. He was better as he went this last season, including a 42-point, a career-high scoring output in the quarterfinals of the AAC tournament against Wichita State. This is an absolute shooter. This is an absolute dog. And this is somebody who should absolutely be the star of Kansas State in 2025. Will he be enough? That's the biggest question. And to make sure I was getting everything covered, I spoke with Isaac Shiade of Locked On College Basketball to make sure we discussed it in full. PJ Haggerty coming to the Wildcats.
Man, it's great to be joined today on Locked On College Basketball by our guy, Christian Rao, the host of Locked On K-State. First appearance, I believe, on Locked On College Basketball. Christian, it's great to have you. It's good to be here. I live just a few hours away from Manhattan, so I'm super glad to be chatting about the Wildcats today and the massive big news of Memorial Day. PJ Haggerty is off the market. He goes to Jerome Tang's Wildcats. Christian, just immediate takeaways from this. What was your thought? I know this has been a potential thing, but what was your thought when the news actually hit?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. First-time caller, long-time supporter of Locked On College Basketball. But, this was huge. And I guess you want to call it a Memorial Day to remember for Kansas State and for especially Jerome Tang. This is something that was absolutely needed for Jerome Tang. I have been saying this entire offseason, Isaac, that this is a very underwhelming offseason for Jerome Tang and staff, especially after missing the dance, not just one, but 2 years in a row after having that Elite Eight appearance as soon as he showed up. Hey, this is a moment for Jerome Tang where he can finally maybe start living up to that resume that he said after beating Kansas in Lawrence a few years ago, stepping up on the scoreboards table and saying, get used to winning here. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Because I remember it quite well.
Vividly.
And that hasn't really happened since that type of scenario happening. If PJ Haggerty can be what he was last year, which was exciting, the American Player of the Year, American Athletic Player of the Year, if he can do that at a Big 12 level, then I'm stoked. Can he do that with this roster they've created? That's another question. We'll see what happens moving forward, though.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point, Christian, because we've seen him do it back-to-back years now at the AAC level with both Tulsa and then last year Memphis, as you said, started in the Big 12 at TCU, but he only had 2-ish points a game there. But of course, he was a freshman, who knows, and now he's blossomed. Speaking of which, I guess PJ Haggerty really likes purples and blues with his team, with all of this bookending his career with the purple with some blue sandwiched in between. But I mean, you look at this for Jerome Tang, as you said, and it's like brings in, I mean, this is now 2 20-point scorers that have transferred in. I haven't looked around and done the research yet, but I bet it's going to be hard pressed to find anybody else in the nation who's brought in 2 guys that have scored at that level. But the thing is, it's PJ that did it at Memphis last year, but also Abdi Bashir, who did it at Monmouth, which is not exactly the same level as Memphis or obviously the Big 12. And, what is it? Three other guys that all scored in double figures last year that transfer in, but at Bowling Green and Akron and UNC Wilmington. And so, Christian, I guess the question is, can PJ help level these guys up to the Big 12? Do you see that happening?
I hope so. I really do hope that's the case. Do I think it can happen? Well, when you look at Memphis, I think Memphis is a really good and interesting team, right? Because yes, they are seen in the American Athletic Conference, but I think what Hardaway has done with that squad over the last couple seasons, and we've seen it also happen as well. Look, they made the tournament last year at large bid, really. Or at least they won their conference, but they could have been in at large bid, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they could have been. Either way, Kansas State did not, and they didn't in the last 2 years. So you're looking at a player that has tournament experience, went on a winner, something that you can say about some of these other players. I love Bashir. I love what he actually brings to the squad. He's not afraid to shoot the 3, but Monmouth was not a winner of a program. We will see if he can be able to turn these players, into winners. That will be the big thing. And Bashir's one of them. But also Nate Johnson. Let's talk Nate Johnson, named the MAC player and defensive player of the year. The defense part is going to be really important because some of these other players that are coming over are not very good defensively. Look, Jerome Tang knows how to coach defense. That has never really been an issue, defensive efficiency with Kansas State while Jerome Tang's been in-house. Offense was a complete and utter problem last year, and that seems to be the main focus for Kansas State this offseason, although I feel a little underwhelmed about it. When you add PJ Haggerty into the mix, you add Bashir into the mix, you add Nate Johnson in the mix, Marcus Johnson as well, coming over from Bowling Green, not afraid to shoot the 3 as well. There is a lot of offensive potential on this squad that, in my opinion, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, a little bit later with Matt Driscoll. In my opinion, this offense has to get better. You can't score just 70 points a game and expect to have a winning record in the Big 12.
Yeah, well, if last year is any indication of that, PJ would have 2 out of every 7 of those points. And so, but Christian, I think that's part of it too, is it feels like what PJ is going to have to do as part of this roster is, because he's such an electric scorer, and hopefully the rest of these guys can level up to the Big 12 level, is if the game plan is to, I just think about like Kelvin Sampson, for example, game prepping for K-State, is going to want to shut down PJ Haggerty. And so the question is, can he rise above, last year at Memphis, let me look back real quick, 3.7 assists a game, 3.3 turnovers a game. And so it's like PJ is going to have to find a way to involve the rest of his teammates, lower those turnovers and raise those assists, so that it's not just like, let's focus in on PJ and stop him. Do you see that in his game? Do you think he can bring that to the table?
He's going to have to find a way to be more of a facilitator for sure, because I expect, just based on what you're bringing in this offseason, for them to run a lot more of this combo guard styled play. When you look at bringing in Nate Johnson and Bashir and Kostick, even the international player they're bringing in, as well as Haggerty, none of them are really true the number ones. And you can even say the freshman last year, David Castillo, who's going to be the lone sophomore on this squad, isn't really a true number 1 as well. So there's not really a true point guard on this squad. Not sure you really need it, especially when you went with the best player available left in the portal with PJ Haggerty. Yeah. But you're going to have to find a way to build facilitation with all these shooters that are going to not only be looking for minutes, but looking for scoring and not afraid to shoot as well. Something that we really struggled with last year was rebounds, and I don't really see that improving this year as well. If you find a type of player like Bashir, like Johnson's, who, and I said Johnson's with plural,
I appreciate
because
that.
I meant that. They're not afraid to shoot it, and they shoot often too. That means you're probably going to get, and again, we're going to talk offensive strategy in a minute, but you're probably going to get them shooting very early in the shot clock, meaning if you don't make those shots at a decent clip, you're going to have to fight for those rebounds. That makes me nervous, and that is the biggest issue that I'm worried about with Kansas State now with this squad. Can PJ Haggerty do it all? I don't think that he's that well-rounded of a player enough on the defensive side and rebound side to do so. But facilitation has to be the biggest thing that Haggerty steps forward in heading into the new year. Can he do that? Well, I sure hope so. I sure hope so, because he is going to be the dude. He has to be the dude for this season if Kansas State wants to make it back to the dance.
I think part of making it back to the dance is having a dude at point guard or at, combo guard, as we're talking about here. A couple years ago when that happened, obviously, it was the Marquise Noel show, the whole King of New York thing at MSG. Now, with Keontae Johnson as, I don't even know if you'd call it Batman and Robin. It's like Batman Val Kilmer and Batman George Clooney, or whoever you want to go with.
I like that.
So critically, it wasn't just Marquise Noel, but he was the head of the snake on that thing, man. And PJ has 4 inches on him, as I think back to because Marquise is like 5'11", right? Am I remembering that correctly? He's a shorty.
He wasn't tall. Definitely wasn't tall.
And so the question is, can Coach Tang utilize yet another dynamic guard to turn in a better year? Do you see that as a potential helpful thing?
Yeah, PJ Haggerty's basketball IQ is up there. So if there's anybody that can make that step forward on this roster right now, it is him. And Tang was very vocal when it came to talking about the point guard play heading into the year. And he was really vocal about it when they were playing the Jayhawks as well, because they were talking about how it was so nice having a point guard on the court that you could trust. And he says he called it basically having another coach on your squad, a coach on the court. And I think that's what he was searching for this offseason. And I think he finally finds that with PJ Haggerty. Look, you can say what you want from last year's transfer portal, bringing in Coleman Hawkins late. And really, Coleman Hawkins didn't really fit at the point. Now, when Achor left the program, it kind of made a lot more sense, okay, why Coleman Hawkins fits into this style. Because at the moment when they brought him into the portal, they didn't need a 3 or a 4 that Coleman Hawkins really was in this piece. That's why I'm not too worried about them adding a point guard type of play. They look like they're going to switch to that combo style. But can he be the X factor? Can he be the game changer? I think he can at a Big 12 level. And if that's all it takes for them to have a winning record in the Big 12, they'll probably get you on the 8 or 9 line.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and you place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking your favorites or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. There's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
The Raiders reward punter A.J. Cole with a nice contract, well-deserved contract extension.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast.
A.J. Cole gets a contract extension. My guy Jordan Schultz, NFL on Fox, he actually sent me the text message and the tweet letting it be known that it happened on Memorial Day, which is, I think, awesome. And it's funny, we were just talking about on Monday's show, if you got to check out the Memorial Day show, I was just talking about there's not a whole lot of news and notes that are be going on. There may be a contract extension here or there, or whatever the case may be, guys sign and guys release, whatever. I did not have any idea that A.J. Cole was going to get a contract extension. So it's not like it's something I saw coming down the pipeline, or I heard that it was getting close and then all of a sudden it got finalized. I had no idea. But this is what this time of year really brings. So Jordan Schultz hit me with the text and let me know that A.J. Cole was getting that contract extension, and then boom, hit me with the tweet as well. And it said, the Raiders and two-time first-team All-Pro punter A.J. Cole have agreed to a 4-year, $15.8 million extension with $11 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid punter in the NFL. Cole had 1 year remaining on his current deal, so now he's under contract for the next 5 seasons at just under $20 million. So there you go. Again, well-deserved contract extension for A.J. Cole, one of the best punters in the business, 2-time first-teamer, 3-time Pro Bowler. He has 374 career punts, 18,193 punt yards, which if you're a mathematician, and I'm not, but if you do the math, 48.6 yards per punt. And he's had 168 of those bad boys down inside the 20. That's of week 18 in 2024. So not too bad for an undrafted free agent, right? Not too bad for a guy who didn't even know if he was going to make the Raiders roster when he got the camp invite. And it's funny, I don't know if you follow Jordan Schultz on Twitter or you actually saw this. I wanted to make sure that I read this little story. It's not really a story, but maybe it's a quick thought. Whatever the case may be, Jordan actually reached out to AJ and got a couple words from him on Monday, and then he tweeted it out. I found it to be really interesting. Check it out. I just spoke to three-time Pro Bowl Raiders punter AJ Cole. So AJ says there was a point where I thought football might be over. After the draft, doubt started to creep in. I went into the Raiders rookie tryout thinking these might be the last 3 days of football I ever get. Imagine that. This might be the last 3 days of football I ever get. So he said, I enjoyed every second. I've been doing that for 6 years now. I actually had a job lined up with IBM starting September 1st. Even after the Raiders signed me, I kept it until the last minute. He said, I literally called Rick at IBM a week before our first game and said, we're playing on Monday Night Football. I'm not coming. He said, probably the most interesting way IBM has ever been turned down. But if I had gotten cut, I would have moved back to Raleigh and just started the job. Being the last Oakland Raider and the first Vegas punter means a lot to me. The history at this position in this organization is unlike anything else, and the fans really get it. I love the organization, I love the fans, and I love Las Vegas. I told my agents I want to be here for a long time. I want to play until I'm 40. I want to play forever. So that's AJ Cole to Jordan Schultz on Monday. I just think that that's really cool. Like, the dude was down to what he believed were the last 3 days. Like, I don't know, and I guess at some point it happens to everybody. I couldn't imagine what myself thinking, hey, man, this might be the last week I do radio. Right? These might be the last few days. Actually, I've had that situation when I was in a music station in Texas, but I was still on ESPN at the same time, so it wasn't really the same. But we all knew that the show was about to come to an end because, well, one, the station wasn't very good, and the show wasn't either. So we all wore, like, black that day, like we were going to our own funeral. So that was, I kind of remember that, but I can't imagine. I also knew there was going to be radio afterwards. He's talking about He didn't think, he thought football might be done, period. Like, he was going to go get a job at IBM, and that was it. It was a wrap. So what a success story, right? Signs as an undrafted free agent back in 2019. He's now with the Raiders through 2025 and beyond after signing a 4-year contract extension, $15.8 million, $11 million guaranteed, highest paid punter in the National Football League. Yeah, I think AJ Cole's got a few more punts left in him. And what a weapon. I had someone tweet at me and say, I think it's a waste of money. And I said, are you serious? This dude has been an absolute weapon since he joined the Raiders. I mean, how many times has AJ Cole flipped the field? How many times do we talk about in the weeks leading up to the game, like we always do it? We always have a breakdown, keys to victory for the Raiders. I usually do that on Friday before games. How many times have I said, as far as AJ Cole goes, just keep being AJ Cole? Flip the field, right? Get the ball down inside the 20-yard line, right? Make it tougher on the opposing offense to get cooking and help out your defense, right? And AJ Cole has been that guy. And someone else tweeted at me and said, man, the Raiders have always had a thing for kickers and punters. And it's true. The history of the silver and black, a lot of great punters, a lot of great kickers. It's so wild that that's happened. Obviously, you think of Sebastian Janikowski, think of Daniel Carlson when you're thinking about kickers off top. George Blanda played both. I didn't see him play, but obviously he played quarterback and kicker. Then you had Marquette King, right? He was a really good punter. It didn't last a long time, but he was really good. Shane Legler was obviously phenomenal. AJ Cole, I mean, they had Ray Guy. It's the award, right? It's the award is the Ray Guy Award. So, I mean, it's wild to think about the history of the Raiders when it comes to the kicking game and the fact that they've had so many really good kickers in the history of their team. It's wild to think, but it's just one of those positions. They're really good at getting them. Like the Packers always seem to have a quarterback right there, right? They go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. Seems like they always have a quarterback lined up, which you want to have that. Seems like the Raiders always have some kind of kicker lined up. If it's a punter or a kicker or a combination of the two, they have that. But hats off to AJ Cole. Not only is he a great player, great dude, right? Just a great guy in general. He always makes time to talk to us. There's only been like one time that he was super frustrated where it's just about like he didn't want to talk to us at all. That was after the game last year in 2024 where he had a couple punts blocked. So obviously you understand those situations. But for the most part, man, this dude is always, joking around, has a good smile on his face, likes to keep a lot of people loose. Him and Daniel Carlson obviously are a great 1-2 punch. So a well-deserved contract extension for AJ Cole. He's been doing some great things ever since he was signed in 2019.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Hey, we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, and it continues to appear it's imminent. He is going to sign with the Steelers very, very soon.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Aaron Rodgers was seen on a podcast, or it was like at a concert thing. I wasn't entirely sure what exactly the thing was, but he was on camera talking to a crowd of people at an event, and a young lady asked him, because I guess she was a Bears fan. She asked, "Is there any chance that you'd ever come to Chicago to play for the Bears?" And Aaron Rodgers said, "No, they don't really like me around there." But he says, quote, "I believe there's a team that might play in Chicago this year on a road trip." So obviously dropping a major hint that the Steelers play on the road in Chicago. Now, others are quick to point out, like, hey, the Saints and the Vikings are also two quarterback desperate teams right now that also play on the road in Chicago this year, that maybe one of them could make the move. Rodgers has already talked openly about not wanting to move to that part of the country. He isn't like, for whatever reason, he doesn't like Louisiana, so that's out. And I have a hard time seeing the Vikings agreeing to this right now, because they unless they don't believe in JJ McCarthy, if they think that he's still a ways away, then I could see that being the move. But they drafted him very, very high last year. So I imagine after seeing him sit out a year, they're going to want to see him take a shot there. But assuming that that's what he was saying there, that still doesn't mean that Aaron Rodgers is going to definitely sign, because Aaron Rodgers is a wild card. He has been a wild card his whole life. That's how he's wanted to live. So this could also him be playing a joke on everyone. But to me, that does read as if it is very, very, very likely that he's still going to sign with the Steelers. And again, the signs just continuing to add up. We talked about last week how Adam Schefter said it seemed like the decision was coming within a week or so. The biographer who's writing a book on Aaron Rodgers said that he was talking to people close to him, and they seemed like the decision was coming soon, and they seemed like he was leaning towards Pittsburgh. All this is adding up to Aaron Rodgers was probably dealing with some stuff or doing whatever he does to get himself together before an NFL season, and is probably going to sign maybe after this week of OTAs. Because the Steelers have 2 weeks of OTAs, and then they have mini camp the week after the weekend after that, and then they move forward from there. That's the projection that I see right there for now. But for the Steelers, again, I've emphasized for a while, like, for me, this was not the move that I thought the Steelers should have gone with. And granted, this apparently was like their second option, maybe after Justin Fields. They offered Justin Fields. The plan was to keep him around. And then, as the bridge guy, the ultimate plan, as always, again, this is a bridge year. I think that's the thing that I want fans to grasp about this. Every time that they start to talk about it, they're like, why is this happening? Like, why are they committing to this guy? Like, as if he's the franchise guy. He's not the franchise guy. And I think that's what people have to remember. But there still are legitimate concerns as far as, can he still, can he get back to playing at a level that helps a team win? Now, if you go back and you look at his stats from last year, Aaron Rodgers did have, some good numbers on him. He was able to throw for almost 4,000 yards at 3,800 yards. He had 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, a good touchdown to interception ratio, but ultimately on a team that lost a lot of games. And when you look at it, a lot of those numbers weren't really coming in the biggest of moments. And to me, that is the version of Aaron Rodgers that the Steelers need the most, to need to be sure that they're getting the most, is a guy that it's not going to be about putting up just raw numbers. It's going to be about, hey, you've been in the NFL for quite some time. You've seen it all. You've played every team multiple times. You've got up against every form of defense. You've faced pass rushers, run stuffers, great secondaries, bad secondaries. You faced all of them. So now your job is with this group of young offensive players that you're hoping is a better offensive line, a more potent rushing attack, a better wide receiver one threat in DK Metcalf, and better weapons overall and better chemistry overall. You're hoping, hey, Aaron, all we're asking you is come in here and do what a veteran quarterback is supposed to do in this situation and win in key moments with heady, smart quarterback play. That's all the Steelers, I believe, are asking of Aaron Rodgers, which is, again, why I think they're okay with this. Because, again, the plan is not for Aaron Rodgers to be in Pittsburgh for a long time. He is here for a year, most likely, and then the Steelers probably draft a guy in this upcoming draft class, trade up, get their guy, and then everyone moves on. But to me, this is about this year having a guy that can kind of say, okay, I'll be a steady presence in the offense as far as a guy who can contribute, a guy who can read defenses, a guy who can make decisions and get the ball out, which is something that Aaron Rodgers still can do. Like if there's anything, his elusiveness isn't there like it used to be, maybe his arm talent has diminished a little bit. He's not as, dangerous as far as escaping the play, but he still can read what you're doing, pick you apart, throw over the middle part of the field, and open up different parts of the field that the Steelers really haven't been able to open up really since Ben Roethlisberger, and even 2020 Ben Roethlisberger, 2021 Ben Roethlisberger was also pretty limited. But when I look at what you're looking at here, like Russell Wilson wasn't going to attack the middle part of the field. He just can't see it. And that's something else that I talked about, last week when talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's going to see the middle part of the field. He's a little bit taller. He has that height a little bit more. And that's part of the field that he can attack, which can open up more things for inside breaking routes. Pat Freiermuth, hitting guys over the, deep over the middle on play action. And that opens up the run game a little bit more. Those are things that I think Aaron Rodgers can legitimately bring to the table that make sense for what the Steelers are trying to do. Now, can this backfire? Absolutely. It certainly didn't work out for the Jets with their acquisition of Aaron Rodgers. Granted, an injury played into it, but last year was a disaster for them, and he was not able to really elevate that at all. My thing here is I don't think Aaron Rodgers is coming to the Steelers as an elevator. I don't think he's coming in to make them 5 games better. I think he might make them 2 games better. I think that he might make them, if Mason Rudolph makes him a 9-win team, he'll make it an 11-win team. If Mason Rudolph makes it a 10-win team, he'll make him a 12-win team. I think this team is still going to come down to the main parts of this team that are being built, that have been invested in by Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, and Andy Weidel, this front office. Their job is to cultivate a new nucleus that's going to be moving forward. Aaron Rodgers is just a pit stop in that journey, and that's what I think people need to grasp when we're talking about what his impact is really going to be on the Pittsburgh Steelers.